Hiya, it's Fiona from Weekly Sewing Bee. Okay, so we are making cloaks. Now, the first one I'm going to make is like a peasant's coat. So, very easy to do, and obviously I'm going to talk you through it for hand sewing as well, because, you know, not everyone has a sewing machine, but everybody has Halloween, don't they? Okay, so what I've got here is I've got 1 metre of a wool mix, yeah, so ideal for a blanket or anything. It's not that soft, but it's all good. And what I've got here is just a corner of that. So 1 metre, and one side is 60 inches, so 2 yards. Now, yeah, so it's square really, that's what I'm saying. So we need to know how wide our head is. I really have got to get a new tape measure. This one's horrid. Okay, not particularly hard. We can use our own head as a model. The other bit of information we need is how far down our forehead we need. So, yeah. I'm just going to sort of draw an invisible line, like I've got a pen or something at the top of my head. Doesn't need to be accurate. So we've got that information. We have got that information. We're going to take half the circumference of our head, and we're going to fold up a corner of our blanket type material, or any material, doesn't really matter, so that we've got our point. Now, we can't start making the opening until we've got to at least the width of our head. Yeah, that sounds fair. That doesn't sound really nasty, does it? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pick up those 2 bits of fabric and mark it with a pin. Now, we also need the forehead dimension, but we also need the whole face dimension. So I can then, from that pin, mark down to there. Okay, that's not particularly hard. So I've got both bits of fabric, and I'm just going to mark it with a pin, and this is for later. Okay, if I was hand sewing, I would take my needle and I would not sew right to the edge, because this will just fray off, but I would start sort of maybe 1.5 inches in, and I would just do a running stitch, nothing complicated. Okay, so I've got my sewing machine. Now, cloaks, medieval times, it was like the simplest garment, and wool cloaks, because of what would happen if it rained on this, it would get wet, but it would take a long time before the water came through. So all I'm doing now is I'm sewing up to my pin. So to there, a couple of reverse stitches just to keep it all in place. So not particularly hard. Okay, now, alright, I've got the bottom of my cloak here. We do need to make a decision. Is this just for, like, one night? Is it supposed to be scruffy and ready to go? Because if it's scruffy and ready to go, I would leave the V-neck that I've sewn on the outside, so that we've got that nice earthy feel when it's opened out. If it's a bit more posh, then I would turn it inside out. Now, if it was for a long running play or something, then what I would do is I would either hem it, yeah? So I would take the whole outside of my point till I have sewn, and I would fold it once, twice, and sew. If it was, I wanted it rustic, but I didn't want it to fray completely, then I would sew on a zigzag stitch. Now, if I wanted, and if I was hand sewing, the stitch I would use if I wanted to sew a hem round the whole outside. It's called a blanket stitch. Let me just get the end of this embroidery thread, which we are going to need on the basic. Yeah, this is just sort of like an elaborate bit. So I've got the edge for here, and I'll be sewing right up to the point where it opens out. I place my needle in, because starting it is always the problem with a blanket stitch, and then I would pull it through from the other side, and this loop that I've left I would put my needle through. Now I would take my thread from the back again, pull it through till it was a suitable length, and this loop that was left I would place my needle through there, and this ends up as a blanket stitch. Now there are tricks. What we can do is with a marker pen we can mark lines on our finger, and then we can measure the exact amount. So, and I would keep doing that all the way around. By the end of it I'd get very good. Get very good indeed. Okay, so let's get rid of that. We don't need to worry. The only reason I've done it at the bottom was so that I don't get caught up in the next bit. So we've decided which side is inside and which side is outside. We've now got to the place where the second pin is. So I'm going to open these out slightly. Put the weight of the fabric on the table so it stays there. I'm going to take a piece of embroidery thread or a piece of thin ribbon. It is a good idea to do. It's not essential. You can get away with not doing this. It just makes it a bit easier to put on. Not even to wear, just to put it on. Because once it's on, it does sort of stay in place. But getting it in the right position is a bit of a tricky thing. Okay, so what have I done here? Alright, so where my pin was, I'm going to take the fabric, and all I'm going to do is do a running stitch around. Now I need enough thread on my needle so that I can go all the way around this circle. So I'm only sewing one side, and it basically is a sort of neckline. I'm going to make sure I've got lots on that side so that it doesn't all pull through, because it is an annoying thing when that happens. So let me lay that out better, and then I'm just going to follow it all the way round. Yeah, okay. Now when I've finished, I'm going to trim my embroidery thread so that I have an amount here of about 7 inches and an amount here of about 7 inches. So I can then knot that all up when, probably after I try it on. Okay, I'm going to pause the camera and just get that bit up to date. Alright, so welcome back. I have now sewn just my line of embroidery thread round there, and let me hold it up. So this is what we're left with. On one side we've got the spiky hood, and then we have got just a slight gather in our embroidery thread. Now getting it on is the trick, and I'm practiced at this. So if we keep our hood up, and then we either get a friend to lie it down for us, or it should be a matter of if you chuck it, then it should go down. Now I'm going to take these two gathered pieces of embroidery threads, and I can either attach them with a knot, or I can get a safety pin or something. And there we go. All it needs is just a way of holding it, and then, yes, you see what I mean? You need a friend just to put your hood right. So that's not going anywhere, and it would definitely survive, say, a week-long play. And there we are. We have a hooded cloak suitable for a Hobbit or something. And as I said before, they were the common dress. Now, some of you may have noticed that I've left a triangle at the back. It's really up to you. Now, I'm not going to cut it because I think it looks okay with the triangle at the back. But if you want to, then we could just literally trim that off. So we would take both points and probably not all the way down to the point, and then cut right across. Okay, so yes, I know it's a bit of an odd video, isn't it? There's me saying, well, it's up to you. You can hem it or not. But yeah, that's a cloak. All right, thank you for watching.